Hello, I'm Dr. Gail Barnes, Professor of Music Education at the University of South Carolina, and I'm very pleased to present with my colleagues Claire Bryant, Professor of Cello, and Doctors Terwilliger and Streisfeld, Professors of Violin. We will present information on selecting the most appropriate repertoire, how to present yourself in an audition, and how to make an effective musical statement. In closing, I will discuss some tips for future music education majors.
Hi everyone, my name is Claire Bryant and I am the Assistant Professor of Cello at the University of South Carolina School of Music. It is my pleasure to be here today to kick off our presentation called Ready, Set, Go, Preparing Your Students for a Life and Living in Music. My portion today will be focused on how to prepare for an audition. And much of what we speak about today will go beyond one particular scenario and can be applied to many facets of life as an artist and musician. Some of these points might be items already on your checklist, but hopefully there are some new thoughts and ideas that will help both the teacher and student on the road to a successful audition. Ready, set, go. How to prepare for an audition. So I'm going to take us through some of these points here. Many of these are things that you probably already have on your agenda when you're preparing your students for an important audition. And there are a few things that might be new ways of thinking about preparation and how to get your students ready for this final culmination, really a performance at the audition. So the first thing is repertoire selection and preparation. And of course, this is crucial and vital, and I'm not going to speak really about it right now because my wonderful colleague Ari Streisfeld is going to go into take a deep dive into this area. So we will just note that it is there because we don't want to gloss over that first step. But we're going to move on to the timing of everything. And timing is everything, as we know in life. And this goes certainly, this means a lot for an audition, and being able to map out a calendar, both for yourself as the teacher and having those scaffolded benchmarks in your mind, but also for your students. And I think starting with the key dates and having those on the calendar and making sure especially that your student knows, has those dates ready to go. Of course, the audition date, is there a preliminary recording that is required by the school? If so, really helping them prepare that recording to put their best foot forward. Nowadays with an iPhone or a computer, we can really do a lot. And so just making sure that we get the best quality that we can, making sure the camera angles are good, that there's nothing obstructing the view between the person on the other end of the computer watching the YouTube link or whatever it might be. And also just trying to show who you are as a person, maybe just saying your name and the pieces that you're going to be playing on the recording. That always goes a long way, I think. And of course, getting those applications in by the deadline and the scholarship applications in, that's very important. But as we look towards the preparation of repertoire, I think having some goals that lead up to audition days are very helpful. And I'm just going to start backwards, closer to the audition day. Having some mock or trial performances ready to go, so that the students can simulate what their audition might be. And I actually do this with my studio at the University of South Carolina. I have them set up mock juries before their end of semester juries, where they get to perform for their colleagues, and maybe some will be behind a table, setting up a few small distractions, nothing too obtuse, but just to simulate the environment that they will be going into, so they've had that practice. And astronauts are spending years simulating their flight, so I think that can be really helpful. recording your students and your lessons, and then having them reflect on that during the week. That can be great. Actually having them record themselves in their practice room. And this is a good way for them to give themselves feedback, but also to be their own teachers in their practice sessions. Memorization goals, so vital, because we know that memorization takes time and that there are different layers of memory. So having that be something that is mapped out in advance is really good. And memorizing small chunks, then maybe movements, then the entire pieces, can be very helpful. Setting up performances of works in progress. I think we forget that we need to practice performing. And so even if something's not to the polished level yet, having a studio class or even recording a practice performance and having them share it with you, that can be great. And then the other points are just to have on the list: completion of pieces, having that sufficient time to learn and absorb. And then, of course, step number 1 is choosing that repertoire, old or new. So timing is everything. And that takes us to something I wanted to share with you. It is called the law of 80%. And now we're sort of getting into the more creative side of how to prepare for an audition. And this is a rule, a law that is from one of my mentors and master teachers, music educator Eric Booth, who is just fantastic. And I worked with him when I was a teaching artist in New York City for about 15 years before I came to USC. And this law of 80% reads this: 80% of what you teach is who you are. And so that let's say that again. 80% of what you teach is who you are, or 80% of what you do, whether it's perform or, so in this case, it's perform, 80% of this performance is who you are. And I think this is really important to remember, because if that, 80% is really rich and full of substance and full of authenticity, that's going to be what we remember on the other side of the jury. So, and I think it applies to the teaching that you do leading up to the audition, but really let's also think about this as the performance, the audition. If your student has a personal connection to, an understanding of the music that they're playing, that is authenticity. And so if we can help them get that and obtain that and have that ownership over the piece of music, over the performance, that quality of the 80% is going to forgive the mistakes. So if the authenticity is there, it's going to overshadow the blips that we all have because we're human. So how do we get that? How do we find that personal connection to the music? How do we find the understanding and ownership over the music? And a fun way to do it, I think, is to find the entry point for artistry. So what this means is we're going to think of music as, a little clinically here. We're going to identify an entry point, which is a musical pathway into the music. And if you can imagine, every piece of music is going to have an array, many, an abundance of entry points that could be possible. There's no right or wrong answer. It just needs to be something that is exciting in the music. What in the piece of music is so awesome to your student? What do they love? What musical element makes this piece so exciting to you? So ask them that. And some examples, some tangible examples here. Rhythm could be an entry point. Melody, musical texture, dynamic contrasts. Like I think of Beethoven, dynamic contrast would be a fantastic entry point, or repetition for Beethoven, or motivic development. Articulation, any of these things can be an entry point. You can make a list for yourselves, and it's fun to do. And then it becomes a lens to teach through. So if we teach through these entry points, that actually gives some focus to our own teaching. And it actually can help solve technical problems, looking at the music through the entry points that we choose for ourselves. So this becomes a lens to build the tangible confidence, connection, and ownership to a piece of music. And that's what makes the artistry, which is what we want to hear and see and witness in the audition. Because the audition is a performance. So if we bill it like that for our students and we prepare them for the performance, it's not going to be something alien or scary. So even just acknowledging the audition as a performance, I think, is so important. And then, as I said before, practicing performance, making sure that along the way we are encouraging our students and giving them opportunities to perform. And then reminding them to be themselves. I know we all just love to meet young artists, and when they come in the room, see them smile, say hello, introduce themselves. If there's an appropriate way to introduce the pieces of music, that's great, because that's part of auditioning a student. We want to know their personality as well. And then the last point I will make is that we should help them work with nerves and not against nerves. And I know this seems obvious, but think about that, working with your nerves and not against them, because we all get nervous, because again, we're all human. And nerves are not bad. They can really be channeled into excitement, and some tools to do that. Some breathing exercises are great. Mental practice, where you're actually visualizing yourself playing the piece inside of the audition room. Meditation. There are many free apps for that. Headspace, Calm. Positive self-talk, having some phrases that you use rather than, oh, I'm so nervous, or my bow's shaking, or don't mess up. Having some keywords that can help you get through the performance. Maybe it is to breathe, or listen, or drop your shoulders. Something that's going to help us say something nice to ourselves in the moment. Leaving the mistakes on the floor, practicing that, having your students play through the mistakes, not to stop. That's important. Putting yourself into the jury's shoes. Reminding them that we are there and wanting them to do well. We're not waiting for a mistake. We're not wanting them to mess up. We are there as they're wanting them to, we're wanting them to hear their music making. And that leads us to the last point. The music making is what matters, not the mistakes. And that is what we should all be focused on as musicians and artists, is sharing this wonderful music and sharing the human experience through music. So with that, I would love to pass it on to my wonderful colleague, Dr. Ari Streisfeld, who will be talking about repertoire and how we choose repertoire for our auditions. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Dr. Ari Streisfeld, Assistant Professor of Violin and Violin Pedagogy here at the University of South Carolina School of Music. I will be presenting on choosing appropriate repertoire for college auditions. This portion of the presentation will discuss how to make appropriate repertoire choices for students interested in auditioning for undergraduate collegiate string programs. First, sit down with your student and ask them about their goals for their collegiate musical studies. Are they interested in majoring in music such as music performance or education? Or are they hoping to continue their musical studies in college while pursuing another major unrelated to music? This could help you steer them towards different programs. Here at the University of South Carolina School of Music, we have both students looking to be professional performers and string teachers, as well as serious string students who are pursuing other majors entirely. Second, research the audition requirements for your students' top choice schools. Many schools have similar requirements, but sometimes certain schools will be more specific with what they would like to hear. So you want to make sure you and your students are prepared with the correct repertoire. Third, once you know which schools your student is interested in and you know what repertoire is required for the auditions, it is time to assess your student's level. In the next slide, we will look at 4 important criteria that you can use to assess your student's level in choosing appropriate repertoire. Finally, choose repertoire that emphasizes the best parts of your student's technique and allows them to shine through their musicality. As a collegiate professor who also teaches pre-college students, I have been on both sides of the repertoire issue. We all want our students to play the wonderful advanced repertoire that we all love, but often students are not quite at the technical or musical level required to play this repertoire when it comes time to audition for college. However, there is wonderful repertoire that we can choose for these students that would be appropriate for their technical level, allow them to show off their musicality, and most importantly, show collegiate professors on the audition panel the potential these students possess. Here is a checklist involving 4 technical guideposts that will give you a pretty clear indication of the current playing level of your students. Scales and arpeggios form the basis for the music we teach. Assess your students' proficiency in all the major and minor keys, as well as how comfortable they are in the upper positions of their instrument. For violin training in particular, proficiency in 3-octave scales is an important indicator of technical level. Etudes and other technical studies are important pedagogical tools. Assess the current level of etudes your student is learning or is prepared to learn. This is a great indicator of what repertoire your student is prepared to play. The final 2 points on the list refer to specific right and left hand techniques that are important for advanced repertoire in all instruments. Assess your student's ability in using advanced bowings and string crossings, as well as their proficiency in double stops and chords. The double stop and chord proficiency is especially important for violinists, as most of our advanced repertoire employs greater and greater use of these techniques. Using this checklist, I have created 3 levels of repertoire. These will be shown on the next few slides. However, as my specialty is violin, the levels I have created and the repertoire I have listed are specific to the violin. If you teach viola, cello, or bass, I hope you will consider this checklist in creating your own repertoire levels. For appropriate repertoire choices for viola, cello, and bass, please refer to the provided handout, which includes repertoire lists created by my colleagues from the University of South Carolina School of Music. Now we will look at 3 levels I have created for violin repertoire based on the checklist criteria from the previous slide. I consider level 1 to be the baseline technical level your student should be if they are interested in auditioning for collegiate string programs. So you can see here on level 1, I have 4 different categories based off the criteria. They should be proficient in some 3-octave scales and arpeggios at level 1, maybe some of the lower scales and arpeggios, G, A, B flat. Currently learning etudes in books such as Mazas Book 1, Kaiser, Early Kreutzer, and learning but not quite proficient in advanced bowings and string crossing techniques, as well as double stop and chord techniques. In level 2, they're proficient in most 3-octave scales and arpeggios. They could be maybe all the keys, but not quite yet. They're starting to learn more advanced and speeds and bowing techniques in the scales. They're learning more advanced etudes and caprices, such as Fiorillo, Mazas Book 2, Middle Kreutzers, is proficient in many but not all advanced bowings and string techniques, and they are increasing their proficiency in double stop and chord techniques, maybe starting to play some double stop scales. Level 3, they'll be proficient in all 3-octave scales and arpeggios, doing them daily in warm-ups, being able to play them at various speeds and bowing techniques. They're learning more advanced etudes and caprices, such as the late Kreutzers, which use a lot of double stops, Rode, Don't, Opus 35, Gavinier. They're proficient in advanced bowing and string crossing techniques, as well as advanced double stop and chord techniques. These, of course, are employed in these more advanced etudes and caprices. Here is the audition repertoire list for level 1. I have broken down the repertoire list into 3 categories. These are concerto, baroque solo, and showpiece, etude, or other required third piece. These are generally the categories that collegiate string programs will require you to choose repertoire from. Some collegiate programs may require a 4th piece. This can also probably be taken from the showpiece category or potentially a 2nd movement of a concerto. So here are the concertos I listed for level 1. You can see they range from the Bach Concerto in A minor all the way to Mozart's number 3 and Viatti Concerto number 23. The Mozart and the Viatti, of course, are the more advanced concertos on this list, but I still consider them to be level 1. They require less double stopping than some of the works we will see in level 2 and level 3, as well as less advanced bowings. You can see in the Baroque category, I list 3 Telemann fantasies. Notice there's no Bach here. I think Bach is a more advanced repertoire, and level 1 students may not be quite ready for it yet. But Telemann offers a wonderful exploration of Baroque style without all the difficulties of the double stops and polyphony that Bach needs. Finally, the showpiece, etude, or other required third piece category, you can see some of the easier Kreisler pieces. They're not easy, but they're easier than some of the ones we will look at later. Etudes from Mazat's Book 1, I think, are wonderful works and can be used in this category. Some more beautiful pieces, such as the Beethoven Romance in F major, less a showpiece, more of a work that to really highlight one's ability to sing a beautiful line. Here is the audition repertoire list for level 2. Here under the concerto category, you can see the Mozart Concerto number 4, Haydn Concerto in C. I'd like to highlight the Rode Concerto number 7 in A minor. This is a wonderful work that is often overlooked and can be a great stepping stone work towards more advanced concertos. In the Baroque category, you can see a few more Telemann fantasies that are a little more challenging than the ones listed in the previous slide. They have a lot more double stops and I think can be great works in this category. And some of the considered easier movements of Bach, although as we all know, no Bach is easy. And then some showpiece etudes and other required third pieces, some Rode caprices that I think are wonderful at this level. Fiorillo caprices, these are some of my favorites, although there can be many others that could be used. Kreisler Preludium in Allegro, the Wieniawski Legend, the Vitali Chaconne, these are all wonderful pieces at this level. And finally, we have the audition repertoire list for level 3. Here we have many of the more well-known works that students play for auditions. Bruch Concerto number 1 in G minor, the Lalo Symphonie Espagnole. These are very challenging works that require lots of use of double stops and chords and advanced bowings, and will require the students to be at a very high level. Here are some of the more advanced Bach movements, the Partita number 3 in E major, which has the very famous Preludio, the G minor Fugue, some movements from the C major sonata, as well, and then finally in the showpiece category, some Paganini caprices that are great at this level. Wieniawski Polonaise, Sarasate is a Gunnerweissen, the Dvorak Romance I think is a wonderful piece. And so these are all pieces that can be used at this level. Of course, if a student's already playing at this level, the repertoire choices are immense and maybe even beyond what this level offers. They may be at a much even higher level than level 3 that I put here. In conclusion, professors are excited by the potential that students show in their audition. We want to hear good, clean musical playing. This can be a challenging and daunting task to achieve in a 10-minute audition. When prospective students audition on repertoire that is above their level, it can often give professors a negative view of their potential. I hope this examination of repertoire choices provides some guidance as you help your students prepare for their college auditions. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dr. William Terwilliger, and I'm professor of violin at the University of South Carolina. I am happy to join my string colleagues in offering advice on how to prepare a successful music school audition. My portion of this session will focus on how to show your distinctive voice in your playing in order to make a great impression on the schools where you audition.
Serving as a university professor for 30 years, I've heard many auditions, so I'd like to offer my perspectives on what makes a particularly impressive one. And since I also teach pre-college students as well, I'd like to offer advice on how best to prepare for your audition and let your unique talent really stand out. As my colleague Ari Streisfeld mentioned, you should choose repertoire that is appropriate to your present playing level, that you have lived with for a while, and you are very comfortable with. Make sure they are works that show off your playing, that you enjoy performing, and with which you have something to express. A movement of solo Bach or Telemann paired with a classical or romantic concerto are usually the safest bets for an undergraduate audition. But if a virtuoso piece or etude is required, make sure that you play them musically and with character. It's always a good idea to feature a variety of styles and types of pieces to show off your versatility as a player. Demonstrate your potential. The purpose of the audition is also to determine your potential no matter what your present level. Whereas we like to hear a polished performance that shows your technical proficiency, we also want to hear your individual interpretations and how you can express yourself through the music. This gives us a good indication of the potential you may have for future growth as a musician and is one of the most important criteria when string faculties determine acceptance and scholarships. The obvious essentials. In order to give an authoritative performance that is distinctly yours, your audition should be guided by the following items, some of which are obvious, but all of which I consider essential. Excellent preparation. Make sure you are prepared to play your works with secure intonation, tone, and rhythm with as much polish as possible. This, of course, is guided by your teacher and good technical underpinning and thoughtful practice. Score study. Study the piano score to really understand the entire work, not just your part. This will give you a better sense of how the piece is put together and how to play the work with piano. This awareness definitely benefits your performance even when you perform without piano. Follow all of the composer's instructions. Consider all tempo indications, dynamics, articulations, and descriptions of character and mood. Make sure that you translate all terms in Italian, French, or German, which is often used in Schumann and Hindemith. Show off your contrasting styles. We want to hear how you play with good Baroque style with Bach and Telemann and appropriate virtuosity and tone with concertos and virtuoso works. With concertos, romantic works should be played differently than Mozart, Haydn, and Stamitz. Make sure you use different vibratos for Baroque, classical, and romantic works, and modern works need a more biting articulation and an expanded tonal palette. Be inspired by the best. Listen to several interpretations of your works played by distinguished artists in recordings or on YouTube in order to get to know the piece, listen for artistic ideas, and gain inspiration. But avoid trying to imitate any one performance. In the end, you are the ultimate authority on how you want to play them. Making the music your own. After you have been guided by everything in the obvious essentials section, then I would encourage you to create your own individual interpretation, bringing the composer's work to life in your own unique way. Here are some points to consider. Choose your tempos wisely. Make sure it adheres to the character of the piece, yet it is manageable for you to keep it controlled. You do not need to duplicate the tempo of your favorite artist on YouTube if you are not quite technically ready for it. However, you don't want to be overly cautious and play a work too slowly that is meant at a much faster tempo. And of course, never speed up the easy parts and then slow down the tricky sections if a work is meant to be at a consistent tempo. You will make a much better impression in your audition if you choose appropriate tempos that matches your present playing level. Pulse and rhythm. Steady versus flexible. Excellent steady rhythm in a performance is always impressive, and it shows who has been practicing with a metronome. But also good artistic judgment is equally impressive in freer sections that require a performer's creativity. Classical concertos with steady accompaniments and faster Baroque dance movements should be steady, but many romantic concertos have changing tempos, have phrases that need time to breathe, or require rubato. So much of our repertoire is influenced by operatic styles, so give them a listen to get ideas of what singers do. Of course, all cadenzas, which are always asked for in auditions, present a great opportunity to show not only your virtuosity, but your great imagination and timing. In solo Bach, the slower and more improvisatory movements need to sound elegant and free within the style, and even some of the more steady movements may require the use of agogic accents, or lingering on certain notes for expressive emphasis, as long as the pulse remains steady. Expressive dynamics and shaping of phrases. We always love to hear the natural shaping of phrases and expressive inflection, or the stresses and tapers, even when they are not given in the music. No one will ever fault you for following the contour of the melodic line, or making a crescendo with a rising sequence and a decrescendoing with a falling one. The more you can reveal your instinctual and natural musicality in the audition, the better. Projecting the characters and emotions of the music. Determine the various characters and emotion in the music and really project them, whether they are playful, sad, joyous, calm, tender, agitated, or dramatic. Climb inside the composer's head and evaluate the expressive intention behind their use of harmony, melody, and rhythm, and give your own emotional value to the music. Non-traditional interpretations. Be careful that your interpretation of a well-known work does not diverge too far from historical traditions, unless you are very convincing. You have to have excellent musical reasons for doing so, and we also want to make sure that you are still able to play in chamber music and orchestral settings with a more unified approach with other players. Energy, commitment, and involvement. Play with energy and enthusiasm, and always commit yourself to every performance you play. Show that you are focused and immersed in the music so that you can communicate your musical ideas clearly with your audience. Building confidence in your performance. Give yourself many opportunities to perform your audition material for other classmates, for family, in recitals, in your church or synagogue, or even outdoors for the public. There is no substitute for experience. Of course, all of this can be done by Zoom these days during the pandemic. If you're making a video, be patient and give yourself many chances to get the best take that truly reflects the playing that really communicates with your audience. If you are auditioning live, create a performer's bubble around yourself that no distraction can penetrate. Also, be prepared to verbalize your goals and aspirations in any potential interview you may have with the faculty. Most of all, show us your love of music and enjoy yourself. That always makes a good impression. Best of luck to all of you.
As a professional violist, I feel very strongly that performing enhances teaching and teaching enhances playing. I will discuss things that teachers can do to help their current students prepare for a life as a music educator. You can tell by the previous presentations of my colleagues that I work with wonderful people who genuinely care for their students, both current and future. In addition, they are as demanding of their music education students as they are of their performance majors, and I completely support that. Wherever you go, look for a school where the applied teacher will support your musicianship and your music education aspirations. It is also important for the orchestra conductor to model the rehearsal techniques you will want to emulate. In addition, the string methods professor should have public school experience. Why do teachers need to play well? If you're a teacher, this is geared towards the students. Please share these ideas with them. If you're a good player, you have either innate aptitude or have worked hard. Most likely, you have both qualities. All of these are essential for not only inspiring your students, but also helping them in their journey. You will need to demonstrate fundamentals such as a good setup, meaning proper bow hold and posture, solid intonation, the ability to adjust pitch, and precise rhythm. How do you know if you will like teaching? If you're a teacher, be sure to provide an opportunity for your promising young musicians to teach. If you're a student, look for opportunities to teach. These can be at school, in the community, at church, or other place of worship. And in the picture, we see one of our former string project teachers, who's been a public school teacher for a number of years now, work with one of her young students. The MUED interview. That will most likely be on your audition day. It might be on a different day. We generally do it after the audition. Music faculty will generally ask the aspiring student why they want to teach. I believe it's important to be sincere. If you say what you think we want to hear, it doesn't sound genuine. It's important to really want to teach. Your future students deserve that. What do I look for? Good grades. That indicates discipline, personality, the ability to make eye contact, and a degree of animation. You should also have a desire to work hard and the ability to keep an organized schedule. There's a lot to fit in. Rehearsals, classes, practicing, and practicum experiences. If you love music and you like working with other people, I can think of no better career. You may not get rich, but you can, with good choices, be financially comfortable. You will find something to be entertained about almost every day of your life. Feel free to contact any of us at any time. We all respond readily to email and would love to help you or your students in any way we can.